You're very welcome back. Now, there's been a lot of controversy surrounding a new prescription clamped down on the pain relief plaster Versatis recently. Under the Medicines Management Programme, new rules dictate that GPs must apply to prescribe the plasters for their patients who are on a medical card or getting medication through the Drug Relief Scheme.
The plaster placed on the skin is understood to work by blocking the pathway of pain signals along nerves.
Now, groups have been forming around the country campaigning for a reversal, and Laura spoke to 27-year-old Versatis user Rosie Farrell in Dublin.
I was diagnosed with MS in 2015 after an episode of double vision. Then it was the following year, in 2016, I had a number of relapses that left me needing a wheelchair, a walking stick, and they left me with chronic pain. So I'd have already been on drugs to help manage my MS, and they'd have switched me to more effective ones. And then I was put on a number of different drugs to help manage the pain. I was rarely leaving the house, and that's when they had to put me on tramadol as well.
Incredibly frightening time for anybody to go through. And yet the Versatis patches did bring an element of pain relief. Can you tell us exactly what the Versatis patches do for you, Rosie?
They were brilliant. They've taken the edge off the pain. So I can wear a patch and I can go out and go for a short walk with the dog. I can go into the office, you know, I can see people, so I'm not isolated at home. And without the patches to help me get out there, I'm going to end up using a wheelchair an awful lot more than I already am.
The patches were initially readily available to you. What changed?
I was getting the patches on the long-term illness scheme, and I just went in to collect my prescription in December, and I was told by the chemist that they were no longer available for free, that I had to go and reapply through my doctor for them. And he put in an application for me, and it was denied. But I rang the HSE, so I got speaking to a lady on the phone, and she told me that you were allowed to reapply for the patches again in 3 months. And you can continue to reapply every 3 months. But each time you will only be granted a free prescription for 3 months, and you have to go through the whole process again. Prices vary around the country, but in Dublin they're kind of around €250 for a month's supply. When you have an illness or a disability, there's so many hidden costs people don't see.
In the meantime, how are you managing without the Versatis patches? I mean, was there an alternative offered to you in terms of pain relief?
Yeah, it was a morphine patch. I was offered that through the hospital because they were trying to find something to help me. And I was chatting to my GP about it, and he said, because you're already on tramadol, we can put you on a low dose of these morphine patches, but you will not be able to work or practically leave the house. You'll be out of it.
If you had a chance to talk to the Minister for Health now, what would you say to him?
I would ask him what he would do in my situation. Would he rather be on Versatis patches, or would he rather be on morphine and out of work? Why is it acceptable that at 27 I shouldn't be able to work anymore because the government won't fund these patches? I would want the government to reverse the cut and fund the cost of these patches for people with these conditions. So I'm going to continue fighting this because I have no choice. This is my life, you know? There's a Facebook group set up at the moment. It's called Patch Us Back Up. We're trying to get people to follow it because there's strength in numbers. And hopefully the minister will hear us and, you know, he'll have a heart and he'll realise this is not a nice thing for people. He wouldn't want to live in pain, so why should we?
A huge thank you to Rosie Farrell for telling us her story. We asked the HSE for a representative to join us this morning, but none were available. In lieu of this, they've given us the circular that they sent to GPs regarding Versatis as their statement to us, which we have taken in part.
It reads, the changes to reimbursement are effective for all newly initiated patients from the 1st of September 2017. To reduce workload for GPs, the HSE has identified those patients who were supplied antivirals in recent months to facilitate seamless access within the licensed indication of Versatis. GPs will not need to apply for reimbursement approval where the patient has been prescribed recent antiviral therapy. Applications reviewed by the Medicines Management Programme under exceptional circumstances may take up to 3 working days before approval or non-approval will be communicated back to the GP.
Joining us in studio to discuss is John Lindsay from Chronic Pain Ireland and Priscilla Lynch of the Medical Independent, who initially broke this story. And Priscilla, let's start with you. Good morning, by the way, both. You're very welcome.
Morning, guys.
Give us a little bit of background to the story and how the story broke and the reaction after it broke.
Well, back in August, GPs received a circular from the HSE telling them about the new restrictions on these lidocaine patches for their patients. The HSE pointed out that about 25,000 patients across the country would be affected. They said the reason for this restriction was that these patches were being used for indications that they weren't licensed for. So they're actually only really licensed for people who are suffering pain after shingles. But now they're being used by patients with a wide range of conditions, such as Rosie there for MS. The medicine management programme said to GPs that actually there's no real evidence that they work for other conditions, and also that the costs have really increased dramatically over the last 3 or 4 years, that they're now costing the HSE over 30 million a year. And they pointed out that compared to the UK, that we're actually spending more on these patches than the entire population of the UK. So they wanted to rein it back in, put them back really for use where they're indicated, and they offered some alternatives as well for patients, such as paracetamol, ibuprofen and pain-relieving gels. And they also put in place that process where if GPs felt that their patients should still get these patches, that they could apply online. But in the last few weeks, as we've seen, there's just been an explosion in the amount of cases going on radio and in newspapers saying, I was on these patches, they gave me great relief, I would disagree with this, and please, can you give them back to us? GPs have also come out and asked the HSE to reconsider the NAGP representative group. They said that they're very conscious of costs and that they can understand what the HSE Medicines Management Programme is doing, but they said that they're being inundated as well with calls from patients who are upset and distressed about this. Pharmacists have done the same as well, that they're being approached, that patients are very upset and pharmacies being told that you're now actually not going to be reimbursed anymore. And there doesn't seem to be an alternative way to get these patches. Some critics have pointed out, well, have the HSE tried to negotiate perhaps with the manufacturers and bring down the prices? And also they're just trying to say, well, is there better prescribing practices that could be put in place so that patients mightn't have been put on these patches on the first place, that they would have been put on alternative medicines and then did not become dependent on them. But as we've seen from Rosie there, she says that it gave her great relief. Some of these patients have pointed out as well that the alternatives would make them drowsy, unable to drive, unable to work, so that it's not as clear-cut perhaps as the HSE would point out to them. But then the HSE in response has said there's a large placebo effect as well, and that they have to pay for cancer drugs and other expensive drugs, and that they have to balance their budgets somehow.
John, let me bring you in here because you're shaking your head at the suggestion that there's a placebo effect to this drug.
Well, there's probably a placebo effect with every drug, but to say that that placebo is the only reason why Versatis is working is absolute nonsense. I mean, this has caused incredible distress and mental anguish for an awful lot of people. I know, as Priscilla said, that GPs were notified in August and reimbursement ceased on the 30th of November, 3.5 months. That may seem to your viewers a very reasonable time. But for people with the debilitating and horrendous condition of chronic pain, 3.5 months is nothing. Some of them, even though we notified them, wouldn't be aware that we had notified them. And they're only finding out now in December and January.
When they're dropping prescriptions back in and they're not getting filled.
And suddenly they're not getting them filled. And for anybody to come off a long-term medication like Versatis suddenly overnight is incorrect. Even the NHS in the UK, where they restrict prescribing to specialists, have recognised as a cohort of people who are being prescribed in primary care, and that they should be kept on the patch until such time as the prescribing doctor deems it clinically safe to come off. Now,
They can't just stop it.
You shouldn't, no.
It's unsafe to stop it.
It is unsafe. And I know one of the creams that the HSE are recommending instead of Versatis, the NICE, the National Institute of Clinical Excellence in the UK, say that is not suitable for neuropathic pain. Now, Professor Barry, when he was on Claire Byrne Live with us, did say that if anybody's got persistent neuropathic pain, that they would look favourably upon any appeal. And about half a dozen of our members so far have been successful in the appeal. But now we've hit another brick wall that GPs are refusing, a lot of them, to do the appeals process because it's too complex and too long.
And we heard Rosie talking in that VT with Laura about how her quality of life has completely changed. She can go to work, she can function like any of us when she's on this Versatis patch. The alternative that was suggested to her was morphine?
Morphine.
Is that a little dramatic?
That
I mean,
is
that's
very,
completely
very
life-changing,
dramatic.
isn't it?
For quite a few people, they will be left drowsy, they will be left like zombies. You know, and if you're on morphine, if you're over on any more than, say, 95 milligrams a day, you're at high risk of addiction. So morphine is not a solution. Lidocaine Versatis patch is an anaesthetic, very effective at, you know, if you like, dumbing. It doesn't get rid of the pain, but allowing people like Rosie and the lady who started, one of our members, who actually was the first to ring Joe Duffy, everything has failed for her. Versatis was the only item that was giving her relief that allowed her to get out of the house. And now she's off everything.
So what's the course of action, John, you know, on behalf of your members? Is it just lobbying? Is it, you know,
well, Professor
like
Barry
this?
has agreed to meet with me.
Okay.
And I'm going to do that tomorrow when I go to put a few proposals to him. They're not going to reverse the decision because of the cost.
How much does the drug cost if one were to go out and buy it?
I've been trying to find out. Oh, well,
Because the price seems to vary from one report to the next.
Huge, but some of our members have gone and have actually paid for it. And the prices varied from €330 a month to €480 a month, depending on which pharmacy you go to.
And there was the suggestion that some of your members might go abroad to avail of it.
Yes, some, I know one whose parents are going to go to Spain to try and get a 6-month supply. But as far as I know, it's illegal to import prescription-only medications into Ireland. So
Okay,
we
so we're
wouldn't
certainly not
recommend
making
anybody.
that suggestion or recommendation,
Correct.
just for the record. Priscilla, what's the likely outcome of this, do you think?
Well, the Minister for Health, Simon Harris, has pointed out that he wants patients to be treated with compassion, that his understanding of the budget restraints. It's also going to be debated in the Seanad this week as well, so we should probably hear a bit more from the Minister and from the HSE themselves about it. I suppose it's really about balancing the budget, but also balancing the needs of patients who are in obvious pain and distress from what the cases that we've been hearing here at the moment. Surely, would the HSE go to the manufacturers of the patch and look at negotiate
a
deal?
price? Yeah. Thank you very much for coming in. We appreciate your time, John.
Thank
Priscilla,
you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.